Hello YouTube and welcome back to another Dare to Game video. Today we're going to be talking Mount&Blade Bannerlord, and the topic for today is going to be which faction is the best one to go with. And so we're going to break it down into various points and counterpoints and all that sort of stuff, but basically we're going to be ranking them, or really just breaking down each one to give you a good idea of what they feel like. So let's just dive on in and get right into that. So the first choice you have to make in Mount&Blade II Bannerlord is your faction culture. It's an important choice as it affects your character's background story and history. If you choose one faction, you can still go and fight for another faction, so it's not as important of a choice as you might think. The one thing to pay attention to is the buff your faction gives. This guide takes an in-depth look at each faction and the buffs they give, so you can decide what will complement your playstyle the best. So we can start it off with the Vlandians, and what it says about them says, the Vlandians are the descendants of adventurers from the west who lived under the Empire for centuries before forming an independent kingdom. With the decline of imperial authority, they have evolved into a well-organized feudal society, led by a caste of warlike nobles who prefer to fight with spears and lances on horseback. So their buff is that they get 20% more upgrade XP to troops from battles. The Vlandians have one of the strongest buffs in the game, so your army will immediately have an XP advantage over all the other armies. And your buff will be useful throughout the entire game, so this isn't one that is only useful in early game or late game. This one is one that will consistently be very, very useful. Next up we have the Sturgeons, okay, and what it says about the Sturgeons is they are descendants of the foreign tribes of northern Calradic. As the Empire expanded into their cold forest, they found a ready market for the luxurious furs of woodland animals whom they traditionally hunted and trapped. Sturgeon chieftains became princes, vying for preeminence with the help of Nord mercenaries who migrated into their realm. They are good hunters and wanderers, traveling far in search of opportunities both for trade and plunder. The buff they get is 20% less speed penalty from the snow. So this one can be useful, especially if you're in the northern part of the map, so you can move a lot quicker in snowy areas. It's pretty useful, but only for that particular area, so it's not as good of a buff as the Vlandians. Alright, so next we have the Empire, and it says the Calradic Empire is in decline, even before the murder of the Emperor Arenicos. The once united realm was torn by political rivalries. Today, these factions are in open war, yet Calradians endure. They are technologically more advanced than their neighbors, and their mastery of engineering is not just evident in their aqueducts, beautiful architecture, and massive city walls, it also makes them experts in siege warfare. The buff they get is a 20% construction speed bonus to town projects, wall repairs, and siege engines. This is definitely one of the most popular factions in Bannerlord, as just based on what I've seen people playing and, comments on videos. And their buff allows you to easily take over towns and castles and repair them quickly to help you sustain them. So this is, again, a very, very good buff, especially if you're going to be running your own kingdom or just owning and maintaining a lot of towns or castles. Plus, the boost to construction speed, building siege engines, really helps with sieges. So definitely a good perk for the Empire, but that should come as no surprise. Next we have the Azerai, and so they are the inhabitants of the Nahas Desert, a mixture of nomadic Bedouin and settled oasis farmers. They are famous for their horsemanship and their knowledge of the learning of many lands, especially medicine, gained from lying on some of the continent's most lucrative trade routes. Each clan is fiercely proud of its lineage and often jealous of the others, but when united by a charismatic leader, they become a major force in the south. So the buff they get is that caravans are 30% cheaper to build, and they have a 10% less trade penalty. The Azerai are another faction with a pretty good buff, allowing you to benefit from trade much more than others. If you plan to roleplay as a merchant, this buff will net you some serious monetary gains. One benefit of having a lot of money is that you can easily build armies, and there are, of course, a lot more. Money is very, very important in the game, so if you're going for that route and you know you're going to want to do caravans, the Azerai is a good culture to go with. Next up we have the Koozai Khanate. The Koozai confederation of steppe tribes used to live a nomadic life, but have recently settled in the eastern frontier of the Empire, and are slowly transitioning into an agrarian society with permanent town centers. Despite this, they still retain many aspects of their nomadic life, including their affinity with horses, and they are also masters of mounted archery, shooting, and then galloping out of reach. So the buff they have is a 10% extra speed bonus for horsemen on the campaign map. An extra movement speed bonus for your horsemen will complement you nicely if this is how you plan to build your army. You will easily be able to win most battles purely through maneuvering better, because obviously their cavalry is some of the best in the game and they're very good at that skirmisher type combat. So if you plan to do a cavalry based playthrough, especially if you kind of want to go with that Koozai theme, then obviously choosing their culture is a good way to go, because they're going to help you move around the map faster and give you access to, you know, better cavalry earlier in the game. The last culture I want to talk about are the Battanians. So the Battanians still remember the olden days when the woods stretched across northern Calradia and the Empire and its cities had yet to violate their sanctity. Their fierce warriors remain loyal to their traditional ways, they paint their faces when going into battle, and even their noblemen prefer to fight on foot, while using great axes and two-handed swords with deadly efficiency. So the buff they get is forests give 10% less speed penalty to parties. So there are a lot of forests on the map, and more so all over the map than the snow one. So this is a better buff than the Sturgeons, but again, it's not as good as some of the other ones on the map. Yes, you can move a little bit faster while you're in these forests, but you know, it doesn't help as much as the other buffs do. So again, that's going to be a weaker one, probably the weakest buff in the game. Okay, so let's just talk about some starting strength for each faction. Sturgia will start with 7 towns, 8 castles, and 32 villages. So pretty standard size. Most of these are going to be right around that size with a few more or less of each one. The best thing Sturgia can say for their infantry is that they don't have a best in class out of any of the units, but they do have pretty solid infantry options. Their shock troops, Ulfhednars, and veteran warriors are all some of the best infantry in the game. So that's Sturgia. Then we have Battania, which has 5 towns, 8 castles, and 33 villages. Their boasting troop is that they have the best archers in the game, and that's the Battanian Fian champions. Then there's Vlandia. They have 8 towns, 9 castles, and 26 villages. They have the best lancers in the game in the Vlandian Banner Knights, and they also have some decent anti-cavalry units in the Vaegirs and the pikemen, and of course also crossbowmen. So they've got a pretty solid army overall, which, you know, fits everything else that we know about Vlandia. They have the Azerai, which they have 8 towns, 9 castles, and 30 villages when they start out. Their boasting point is that they have the best mounted archers in the game, which is the Azerai Mamluk Heavy Cavalry. Very, very good mounted archers. Then next we have the Koozais, who have 6 towns, 9 castles, and 17 villages when they start out. Their claim to fame is that they have the overall best cavalry army, so they have the most options to build just very, very good cavalry armies, even though they don't have the best in class lancer or archer. But what they do have is the best hybrid cavalry archer / lancer, and that's the Koozai Khan's Guard. So these troops are excellent because they'll run around and skirmish, shoot their arrows and everything, and then they'll charge in with their lances. So it's the only unit in the game that does a really good job of doing both. Then lastly, we have the Empire, which is actually split up into 3 branches. The Northern Empire, which has 6 towns, 8 castles, and 11 villages. The Southern Empire, which has 7 towns, 7 castles, and 32 villages. And the Western Empire, which has 6 towns, 8 castles, and 31 villages. The Empire has overall very good units for every single troop type, but their claim to fame is their infantry. They have the best heavy infantry in the game, and those are going to be in your legionaries or your triarii, so out of your standard and your noble recruitment branches. But they do have good units for everything else. Their cataphracts are some of the best cavalry in the game, some of the best lancers in the game, and their Palatine Guards and Sergeant Crossbowmen are excellent archers, so definitely a very strong unit militarily. The biggest downside there is that they're split into 3 different factions which are going to war with each other all the time. So that's a general starting strength idea for each faction. So what are the best factions? There are 3 that are very strong: the Vlandians, Empire, and the Azerai. What you want to choose will come down to your playstyle. If you want to go for a trading style, the Azerai is probably the best. If you want to conquer the whole map, the Empire is the best. If you want an overall strong army throughout the whole game, the Vlandians are likely going to be your best bet. So I hope that was a useful video for you. I hope this helps in some way kind of break down what's going to be your best bet for the culture and the faction starting out, what's going to be the easiest, what's the most useful perks. I was really intending this video to help you with choosing which faction to go with culturally and, you know, troop-wise, based on the style of play that you want to go with. So again, that's why I broke it down into the 3 primary, you know, your merchant style or your military, you know, and then go down into all the different types, cavalry, infantry, all that sort of stuff, because, you know, everybody's got their thing that they like doing. So hopefully this video was a good resource for anyone who didn't exactly know which way they wanted to go starting out. I hope you liked it and I hope it was useful, but in any case, thanks for watching and have a nice day, and I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching another Dare to Game video. If you liked this video, please leave a like and a comment. If you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to the channel. If you like my content and would like to support this channel, consider becoming a member today for as little as $1.99 a month. It makes a huge difference. But in any case, thanks for watching and have a nice day. I'll see you next time.